So
So
what's going on here? They're starting to question kids in the classroom
their
and
question, yes, the police officers are starting to interview students from the high school, and at some point, the some of the kids told the police that they might want to speak to me because I was quiet and to myself. So I guess the underlying theory is that people that are quiet are perceived as loners, because really that's all the kids knew me as in school, is the loner in high school. They don't know about my life after school that I've shared with our viewers here today. So I guess the thinking is that people to themselves commit heinous crimes. I guess that's the underlying theory of that. And so that's how I got onto the police radar. An additional thing is that I was a sentimental teenager, and this death really kind of shook me up. It was my first brush with death, so I had emotional reaction to that. But on the other, and on the police thought that that was suspicious, that you would really get emotional over someone that that you barely knew. So to them, they interpreted that as, this is some sort of outward sign that you're sorry for what you have done. So I want to say the counterbalance of that. At the same time, this really made everybody emotional to the point that free mental health training was offered to anyone in the city who wanted it for free. So those are things on the police radar that how I got on their radar. And then they got a psychological profile from the NYPD, which purported to have the psychological characteristics of the actual perpetrator. And I had the misfortune of matching that. And so you might say it was like a reinforcement factor. So for about 6 weeks, the police played this cat and mouse game with me, in which half the time they would speak to me as a suspect, and the other half the time they would talk to me like they needed my help to solve the crime. So they would say things like, kids won't talk freely around us, but they will around you. Let us know if you hear anything. Stop in from time to time. They'd ask me opinion questions and congratulate me that my opinions were correct. Prior to being a teenager, the career that I wanted to have when I grew up was actually to be a cop. And so this unexpected early opportunity to do this quasi police work, along with my age, 16, was how they pulled the wool over my eyes as to the absurdity that a 16-year-old could help in a active homicide investigation. They did the good cop, bad cop routine, which involved one officer pretending to be my friend, the other one more aggressive. And in time, I began to look to the officer who was pretending to be my friend as a father figure in light of my father's absence.
wow.
So eventually they got me to agree to take a polygraph test. So they told me they got some new information in the file and they wanted to share that with me, and that would allow me to be more helpful to them. But first I'd have to take and pass this polygraph test. So the next day, rather than report to the school, I went to the police station where I thought the test was going to happen at. And they instead drove me to the town of Brewster, which was in Putnam County, so 40 minutes away by car. Had no idea where I was, so I have no way of independent means of escape. So I'm totally dependent on the police. My mother and grandmother think that I'm in school, so they don't call around looking for me. There's no attorney present. I'm not given anything to eat. They gave me the 4-page brochure, which explained how the polygraph worked, but it had a lot of big words in it that I didn't understand. But then I thought, well, I'm here to help the police, so what does it matter? Let's just get on with it. Then they put me in a small room and he gave a polygraphist. Polygraphist, by the way, Daniel Stevens, who was a Putnam County Sheriff's investigator, and he was dressed like a civilian, and he never identified himself as a cop. He never read me my rights. I had no clue he was law enforcement. So he gives me countless cups of coffee, which seems pretty clear that the purpose of that's to get me wired up and nervous.
You're a
And then
16-year-old.
and a 16-year-old.
Jeez.
And then he literally wires me up with the polygraph machine. And from there, he launches into his third-degree tactics. So he raised his voice at me. He invaded my personal space. He kept asking me the same questions over and over again. And he kept that up for 6.5 to 7 hours.
Wow.
And so towards the end, he made a statement. He said, "What do you mean you didn't do it? You just told me through the polygraph test result that you did. We just want you to verbally confirm it." So that really shot my fear through the roof. And then the cop who had been pretending to be my friend, he came in the room and told me that the other officers were going to harm me, that he'd been holding them off, but he couldn't do so any longer, that I had to help myself. Then he added, look, just tell them what they want to hear. They'll stop what they're doing. You could go home afterwards. You're not going to be arrested. Being young, naive, frightened, 16 years old, not thinking about the long term, just being concerned with my safety in the moment. I was in fear of my life. The fact that I didn't know where I was and no one else knew where I was either loomed very large in my mind. There was I was overwhelmed emotionally and psychologically. And then, he's given me this threat and he's given me this false promise. And so I decided to make up a story based upon the information which they had given me in the course of that interrogation and in the 6 weeks run up to it. By the time everything was said and done, I had collapsed on the floor into a fetal position, crying uncontrollably. And obviously I was arrested. I was charged with a murder and rape.